Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Readings in Isolation. My name is Saman Giraud, and I'll be reading for you from 1001 Nights again. Hi, Jochen. Hey, Joanna. It is strange to be back at home after having that wonderful, wonderful reading together with Joanna. If you missed it, tune in, check it out on the Vienna Theatre Facebook page, and it's like in all caps special. We had a lovely night at Shakespeare Company bookstore, and our lamps, which one of them I'm still using, were provided by Vienna. Thanks again for all the support, and thanks also to our guests who joined us that night. All right, I hope you all had a wonderful day, and I hope you will be enjoying the evening together with me. Then let's start. Now when it was the 104th night, she said, "It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when Zau al-Makan went in to his brother Shah Khan, he found him sitting with the holy man by his side. So he rejoiced and drew near him and gave him joy of his recovery. Answered he, Verily, we are all under the benediction of this recluse, nor would you have been victorious but for his prayers. Indeed, he felt no fear this day, and he ceased not supplication for the Muslims. I found strength return to me when I heard your Allahu Akbar, for then I knew you to be victorious over your enemies. But now recount to me, O my brother, what befell thee." So he told him all that had passed between him and the accursed Hardub, and related how he had slain him and sent him to the malediction of Allah. And Shah Khan praised him and thanked him for his prowess. When Zat al-Dawai heard tell of her son's death, and she still dressed as a devotee, her face waxed yellow, and her eyes ran over with railing tears. She kept her counsel, however, and feigned to the Muslims that she was glad and wept for excess of joy. But she said to herself, "By the truth of the Messiah, there remaineth no profit of my life, if I burn not his heart for his brother Shah Khan, even as he hath burned my heart for King Hardub, the mainstay of Christendom and the hosts of Crossdom." Still, she kept her secret. And the Vizier Dandan and King Zau al-Makan and the Chamberlain remained sitting with Shah Khan till they had dressed and salved his wound, after which they gave him medicines, and he began to recover strength. Whereat they joyed with exceeding joy and told the troops, who congratulated themselves, saying, "Tomorrow he will ride with us and do manly devoir in the siege." Then said Shah Khan to them, "Ye have fought through all this day and are weary of fight, so it behoveth that you return to your places and sleep and not sit up." They accepted his counsel, and then each went away to his own pavilion, and none remained with Shah Khan but a few servants and the old woman, Zat al-Dawai. He talked with her through part of the night, then he stretched himself to rest, and his servants did likewise. And presently sleep overcame them all, and they lay like the dead. Such was the case with Shah Khan and his men, but as regards the old woman, she alone abode awake, while they slumbered in the tent, and looking at Shah Khan, she presently saw that he was drowned in sleep. Thereupon she sprang to her feet, as she were a scald she-bear or a speckled snake, and drew from her waistcloth a dagger so poisoned that if laid thereon it would have melted a rock. Then she unsheathed the poniard and went up to Shah Khan's head, and she drew the knife across his throat and severed his weazand and hewed off his head from his body. And once more she sprang to her feet, and going the round of the sleeping servants, she cut off their heads also, lest they should awake. Then she left the tent and made for the Sultan's pavilion, but finding the guards on the alert, turned to that of the Vizier Dandan. Now she found him reading the Quran, and when his sight fell upon her, he said, "Welcome to the holy man." Hearing this from the vizier, her heart trembled, and she said, "The reason of my coming hither at this time is that I heard the voice of a saint amongst Allah's saints, and am going to him." Then she turned her back, but the vizier said to himself, "By Allah, I will follow our devotee this night." So he rose and walked after her. But when the accursed old woman sensed his footsteps, she knew that he was following her. Wherefore she feared the disgrace of discovery, and said in herself, "Unless I serve some trick upon him, he will disgrace me." So she turned and said to him from afar, "O thou vizier, I am going in search of this saint, that I may learn who he is. And after learning this much, I will ask his leave for thee to visit him. Then I will come back and tell thee, for I fear thine accompanying me without having his permission, lest he take umbrage at me and seeing thee in my society." Now when the vizier heard these words, he was ashamed to answer her. So he left her and returned to his tent, and would have slept, but sleep was not favourable to him, and the world seemed heaped upon him. Presently he rose and went forth from the tent, saying in himself, "I will go to Shah Khan and chat with him till morning." But when he entered into Shah Khan's pavilion, he found the blood running like an aqueduct, and saw the servants lying with their throats cut like beasts for food. At this he cried a cry which aroused all who were asleep. The folk hastened to him, and seeing the blood streaming, set up a clamour of weeping and wailing. Then the noise awoke the Sultan, who inquired what was the matter, and it was said to him, "Shah Khan, thy brother, and his servants are murdered." So he rose in haste and entered the tent, and found the Vizier Dandan shrieking aloud, and he saw his brother's body without a head. Thereat he swooned away, and all the troops crowded around him, weeping and crying out, and so remained for a while till he came to himself, when he looked at Shah Khan and wept with sore weeping, while the Vizier and Rustam and Bahram did the like. But the Chamberlain cried and lamented more than the rest, and asked leave to absent himself. Such was his alarm. Then said Zau al-Makan, "Know ye who did this deed, and how is it I see not the devotee, him who the things of this world hath put away?" Quoth the Vizier, "And who should have been the cause of this affliction, save that devotee, that Satan? By Allah, my heart abhorred him from the first, because I know that all who pretend to be absorbed in practices religious are vile and treacherous." And he repeated to the king the tale of how he would have followed the religious, but he forbade him, whereupon the folk broke out in a tumult of weeping and lamentation, and humbled themselves before him who is ever near, him who ever answereth prayer, supplicating that he would cause the false devotee who denied Allah's testimony to fall into their hands. Then they laid Shah Khan out and buried him in the mountain aforesaid, and mourned over his far-famed virtues. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of day, and ceased saying her permitted say. Now when it was the 105th night, she said, "It hath reached me, auspicious king, that they laid Shah Khan out and buried him in the mountain aforesaid, and mourned over his far-famed virtues. Then they looked for the opening of the city gate, but it opened not, and no sign of man appeared to them on the walls, whereat they wondered with exceeding wonder. But King Zau al-Makan said, "By Allah, I will not turn back from them. though I sit here for years and years, till I take blood revenge for my brother Shah Khan and waste Constantinople and kill the king of the Nazarenes, even if death overcome me, and I be at rest from this woeful world. Then he bade be brought out the treasure taken from the monastery of Matuhina, and mustered the troops and divided the monies among them. And he left not one of them, but he gave him gifts which contented him. Moreover, he assembled in the presence 300 horse of every division, and said to them, Do ye send supplies to your households? For I am resolved to abide by this city year after year, till I have taken man bold from my brother Shah Khan, even if I die in this stead. And when the army heard these words, and had received his gifts of money, they replied, To hear is to obey. Thereupon he summoned couriers, and gave them letters, and charged them to deliver the same, together with the monies, to the soldiers' families, and informed them that all was safe and satisfied, and acquaint them, saying, We are encamped before Constantinople, and we will either destroy it or die. And albeit we be obliged to abide here months and years, we will not depart hence till we take it. Moreover, he bade the Vizier Dandan write to his sister, Nuzhat al-Zaman, and said to him, Acquaint her with what hath befallen us, and what be our situation, and commend my child to her care, since that, when I went out to war, my wife was near her delivery, and by this time she must needs have been brought to bed. And if she hath given birth to a boy, as I have heard say, hasten your return and bring me the acceptable news. Then he gave them somewhat of money, which they pouched and set out at once, and all the people flocked forth to take leave of them and entrust them with the monies and the messages. After they had departed, Zau al-Makan turned to the Vizier Dandan and commanded him to advance with the army against the city walls. So the troops pushed forward, but found none of the ramparts, whereat they marvelled, while Zau al-Makan was troubled at the case, for he deeply mourned the severance from his brother Shah Khan, and he was sore perturbed about that trader, the ascetic. In this condition they abode 3 days, without seeing anyone. So far concerning the Muslims. But as regards the Greeks, and the cause of their refusing fight, during these 3 days the case was this. As soon as Zat al-Dawahi had slain Shah Khan, she hastened her march and reached the walls of Constantinople, where she called out in the Greek tongue to the guards to throw her down a rope. Quoth they, Who art thou? And quoth she, I am Zat al-Dawahi. They knew her and let down a cord to which she tied herself, and they drew her up, and when inside the city she went in to the king Afridun and said to him, What is this I hear from the Muslims? They say that my son, King Hardub, is slain. He answered, Yes. And she shrieked out, and wept right grievously, and ceased not weeping thus, till she made Afridun and all who were present weep with her. Then she told the king how she had slain Shah Khan and 30 of his servants, whereat he rejoiced and thanked her, and kissing her hands, exhorted her to resignation for the loss of her son. Said she, By the truth of the Messiah, I will not rest content with killing that dog of the Muslim dogs in blood revenge for my son, a king of the kings of the age. Now there is no help for it, but that I work some guile, and I contrive a way, whereby to slay the Sultan Zau al-Makan, and the Vizier Dandan, and the Chamberlain, and Rustam, and Bahram, and 10,000 cavaliers of the army of Al-Islam, for it shall never be said that my son's head be paid with the blood wet of Shah Khan's head. No, never. Then said she to King Afridun, "Know, O King of the age, that it is my wish to set forth mourning for my son, and to cut my girdle and to break the crosses." Replied Afridun, "Do what thou desire. I will not gainsay thee in aught, and if thou prolong thy mourning for many days, it were a little thing. For though the Muslims resolve to beleaguer us years and years, they will never win their will of us, nor gain aught of us save trouble and weariness." Then the accursed one, when she had ended with the calamity she had wrought and the ignominies which in herself she had thought, took ink, case, and paper, and wrote thereon, from Shawahi, Zat al-Dawahi, to the host of the Muslims, "Know ye that I entered your country, and duped by my cunning your nobles, and at first hand I slew your king Omar bin al-Numan in the midst of his palace. Moreover, I slew in the affair of the mountain pass and of the cave many of your men, and the last I killed were Shah Khan and his servants. And if fortune do not stay with me, and Satan obey me, I needs must slay me, your Sultan, and the Vizier Dandan, for I am she who came to you in disguise of a recluse, and who heaped upon you my devices and deceits. Wherefore, and you would be in safety after this, fare ye forth at once. And if you seek your own destruction, cease not abiding for the nuns. And though ye tarry here years and years, ye shall not do your desire on us, so peace be yours." After writing her writ, she devoted 3 days to mourning for King Hardub, and on the 4th she called the knight and bade him take the letter and make it fast to a shaft and shoot it into the Muslim camp. When this was done, she entered the church and gave herself up to weeping and wailing for the loss of her son, saying to him who took the kingship after him, "Nothing will serve me, but I must kill Zau al-Makan and all the nobles of al-Islam." Such was the case with her. But as regards what occurred to the Muslims, all passed 3 days in trouble and anxiety, and on the 4th, when gazing at the walls, behold, they saw a knight holding a bow and about to shoot an arrow along, whose side a letter was found. So they waited till he had shot it among them, and the Sultan bade the Vizier Dandan take the missive and read it. He perused it accordingly, and when Zau al-Makan heard it to the end and understood its purport, his eyes filled with tears, and he shrieked for agony at her perfidy. And the minister Dandan said, "By Allah, my heart shrank from her." Quoth the Sultan, "How could this whore play her tricks upon us twice? But by the Almighty, I will not depart hence till I fill her, cleft with molten lead, and jail her with the jailing of a bird in cage, then bind her with her own hair and crucify her over the gate of Constantinople." And he called to mind his brother and wept with excessive weeping. But when Zat al-Dawahi arrived amongst the infidels and related to them her adventures at length, they rejoiced at her safety and at the slaying of Shah Khan. Thereupon the Muslims addressed themselves again to the siege of the city, and the Sultan promised his men that if it should be taken, he would divide its treasures among them in equal parts. But he dried not his tears, grieving for his brother, till his body was wasted and sick, growing thin as a toothpick. Presently the Vizier Dandan came in and said, "Be of good cheer, and keep thine eyes cool and clear. In very sooth thy brother died not but because his hour was come, and there is no profit in this mourning. How well saith the poet, whatso is not to be, no slight shall bring to pass. What is to be, without a failure shall become. Soon the becoming fortune shall be found to be, and folly's brother shall abide forlorn and glum. Wherefore do thou leave this weeping and wailing, and harden thy heart to bear arms? He replied, O Vizier, my heart is heavy for the death of my father and my brother, and for our absence from hearth and home, and my mind is concerned for my subjects. Thereupon the Vizier and the bystanders wept, but they ceased not from pushing forward the siege of Constantinople for a length of days. And they being thus, behold, news arrived from Baghdad by one of the emirs to the effect that the king's wife had been blessed with a boy, and that his sister Nuzhat al-Zaman had named him Kanmakan. Moreover, that the boy bid fair to be famous, already showing wondrous signs and marvellous tokens, and that she had commanded the ulema and the preachers to pray for mother and child from the pulpits and bless them in all wise. Furthermore, that the twain were well, that the land had enjoyed abundant rains, and that his comrade, the fireman, was established in all prosperity, with eunuchs and slaves to wait upon him, but that he was still ignorant of what had befallen him. And she ended with a greeting of peace. Then quoth Zau al-Makan to the Vizier Dandan, Now is my back strengthened, for that I have been blessed with a son whose name is Kanmakan. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of day and ceased saying her permitted say. I love this story. It's quite brutal, but it is so well written, isn't it? I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you all for tuning in. I just waved back to a few people. I wish you a wonderful, wonderful night, a peaceful sleep, sweet dreams, another beautiful day, much love, and as usual, remember to go inwards instead of outwards. Sit tight, everyone, and tune in. Tomorrow, I guess, is Friday. Joanna will be reading for you. You should be excited. All right, good night, everyone. Bye. Thank you.